I had to go to the emergency room after being sent there from my primary care doctor, as I was experiencing some really weird symptoms, a strange rash on my body, my blood pressure and pulse were super high, and I had a pretty high fever. I routinely take pain medication for a disorder I have that caused me to have 3 surgeries, one of which complicated things even more. Naturally, this is all on my chart, so the hospital was aware of my medication usage. I've had to deal with doctors assuming I'm an addict before, but I figured it would be fine that time, because I was literally sent to the hospital. My doctor even called ahead to let them know he was sending me there and had visible symptoms that had nothing to do with opioids or opioid use. However, the doctor refused to take me seriously and ended up leaving me in a room with the door closed for 6 hours as my symptoms got worse and worse. At one point during this, a nurse came in to put in an IV. As she was doing this, she informed me that the doctor was taking his time to see me because he assumed I was in withdrawal. That was ridiculous because I had even brought and shown him my full bottle of medication, the pills were stamped too, so he could see what they were, and that I wasn't trying to pull off some sort of half-baked lying scheme to get meds, so he'd know it wasn't withdrawal. I got pissed about that and asked the nurse to please let the doctor know that I was not in withdrawal, they could test my blood and find out for sure if they didn't believe me. She ignored what I'd said and instead responded with, "You know, these sorts of issues happen a lot less to people who find ways to fill their days and be productive. You should really consider getting a job." To be clear, I have a job. A full-time job with a major tech company. Her comment was the cherry on top of an already crappy experience. I flipped out and said, "Idiot, I have a job. It's full-time with X company and I probably make a hell of a lot more than you do. And I don't treat my clients like pieces of crap like you do." I definitely raised my voice as well. I admit that was probably over the line. But she was making assumptions about me and treating me like garbage. My friend who was with me at the emergency room got really embarrassed, called me a jerk, and left. I ended up finally being admitted to the hospital after a few more hours, and after a few days, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition that was causing all of my symptoms. I've been considering reporting the nurse and the doctor. I know I told them off, but I feel like I was justified. My friend who was with me still thinks I'm an idiot for blowing up at the nurse and thinks reporting them would make me an even bigger idiot. I really truly believe I was justified, but I want some other opinions before I potentially damage 2 people's careers. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. I have an autoimmune disease, and I can't tell you how many times I've been accused of medicine seeking. I don't take any medication with narcos or opioids, told it's in my head, told it's not that bad. It happens to people with autoimmune diseases all the time. When you have an invisible illness and your symptoms seem to be generic or match multiple diseases, you get treated like a nut job. I'm sorry that you had to experience that and that you have an autoimmune disorder. The nurse and the doctor were unprofessional and unethical, and I would definitely file a complaint with the hospital. Not the idiot. I had a doctor tell my mom right in front of me that I was clearly doing medicines. I had been working all day installing a retaining wall. I cooled out, sat down, drank a Gatorade. I got back up to help lift something and damn near passed out. My heart was racing at the same time. I found out from a sports trainer that it's actually common. When you've worked your body hard, rest, and then restart hard again, your heart sometimes panics and one of the other backup valves kicks in. It's really freaked up how hard it is to trust doctors anymore. Not the idiot for exploding, and you should definitely report it. The nurse was extremely rude. You're in pain and not there for life advice, but for medical treatment. She absolutely crossed a line by assuming things about your life and talking down to you based on those assumptions. I don't think I would have left without talking to somebody about the way you were treated by the nurse. They should be providing treatment without bias or assumptions. It is dangerous for a doctor or nurse to just automatically assume they know what's going on, and people need to know about these practices. We have one of those meal kit delivery services, and one of the meals this week was a salmon dish. I am a big salmon fan, and my husband thinks it's okay but prefers other things. More often than not with this service, whenever there are 2 whole pieces of meat like a steak or something, one of them will be bigger than the other. In this case, one salmon piece was practically double the size of the other. Normally when this happens I give my husband the bigger piece since I'm a small lady and don't need as much food, but since salmon is my favorite, I figured it would be okay to give myself a big piece this week. I grilled him up a hot dog to go with his meal so that he would have the same amount of food to eat. He didn't say anything during the meal, but afterward when we were on the couch together he asked me why I cut the salmon so uneven and gave myself so much more. I told him that it was actually pre-cut and he didn't love salmon as much as I did, so I thought it would be okay for me to have the bigger piece. He then turns to me and says it was humiliating to be served a hot dog with his meal and that if the portion really was that inadequate I should have made a pork chop or something on equal standing as the salmon to make up for it. I tell him that I don't just have a single pork chop lying around. He tells me I could have gone to the store. I say, well, what is the point of getting meals delivered if I have to go out to the store? He was really upset about it, more upset than I've ever seen him about such a small issue. I told him that if he was still hungry he could make some mac and cheese or something from the pantry. He says he shouldn't have to do that and that I shouldn't just assume that he wouldn't want the bigger piece. I told him I wanted the bigger piece just this once and that if he was going to throw a tantrum over it, then maybe he would be happier cooking his own meals from now on. He stormed upstairs and had left for work early by the time I woke up this morning. Was it really that bad? What the actual hell? He is a grown man who should be able to fend for his own damn self if he's still hungry. And if he ain't doing the work he has zero legs to stand on with regards to how you filled his plate. You're his wife, not his mommy. I am entirely on board with making dinner for my husband and often fixing both of our plates by choice. But he is a wise enough man to understand that I do this by choice and he's smarter than to complain about how it's done. Not the idiot. Assuming his piece of salmon was still a decent portion, then he is acting like a baby and he shouldn't always just assume he gets the bigger portion of everything. Although portion size aside, he's an idiot for demanding OP runs to the store for a special steak because the hot dog she made to compensate wasn't good enough as an extra item. I'm guessing he never has a problem with the difference when OP serves herself a smaller portion normally. Not the idiot, what a ridiculous thing for an adult to have a fuss over. He can share the larger portion with you this one time without having a tantrum about it. Especially where it's an item he's not even very fond of. However, going forward, I would make sure to cut and divide all portions so that you are both being served an equal amount. If he complains you can say that since last time was such an issue you fixed it. If he still grumbles let him start fixing his own meals. A little backstory. My dad, 55, divorced my mom, 53, when I, 25, was 5. He moved to another country, remarried, had other kids, and barely contacted me in 20 years. When I was 7, my mom also remarried, and I liked my stepdad, 56, immediately. He treats my mother with respect and is amazing with me. He had a daughter from a previously relationship, and even though she lives with her mother, we always got along really well whenever she came to stay with her dad. To be honest, my stepdad has always been more of a father to me than my actual dad. He has been there in every important moment of my life and has taught me to stand up for myself. He may not be my dad biologically or legally, but, for all intents and purposes, he is my dad. My fiancée, 26, proposed to me last December and I said yes. The wedding was supposed to happen this June, but it has been postponed. Anyway, I decided that I wanted to invite my dad and his family. I figured it would be a way to at least reconnect a little. My mom and stepdad were perfectly fine with it, so I went ahead with it. They immediately accepted and were actually very excited. But then my dad started talking about the suit he was going to wear and that it had to be a good one since he is walking me down the aisle. I said that no, he's not, my stepdad is. I want him at the wedding, but my stepdad is the one who has been there for most of my life, so he's the one who gets to do it. My dad flipped out. He said that I was breaking his heart and being a bad daughter, and that if he can't do it, then what's the point in going? His other kids surprisingly back me up, but his wife says that I'm being ungrateful. His parents say the same thing. Am I? Am I the idiot for not wanting my dad to walk me down the aisle? Not the idiot. I think your bio dad is being selfish. Something important and special like a wedding is happening, and now he wants to be your dad. A dad is more than DNA. Let the man who actually raised you walk you down the aisle. Not to mention it's your wedding and you can have whomever you please walk you down. I'd make sure bio dad had a matching boutonniere and have his family and him sit in the front with other immediate family, but the honor of walking you down the aisle should be given to stepdad. Ungrateful. For what, exactly, is Op supposed to be grateful? So not the idiot. My stepdad is my dad. He drove me to school. He worked his back off and kept me fed, clothed, and housed. He picked me up and drove around while I cried when my high school boyfriend cheated. And damned right he walked me down the aisle, even though I had a decent enough relationship with my father, he kept contact, sent day cards, etc. Walking down the aisle is, in my mind, representative of a relationship, and OP's father didn't build one of those, and that's on him. It's super easy to be a father, all you need to do is to deposit some semen in the right place, but it takes work to be a dad. Your biological father didn't do that for you, your mom's new partner did. He's your dad. Walking your daughter down the aisle is a privilege, not a right, given, usually, to the dad, not the sperm donor. I'm confused why he thinks you owe him anything. What did he do for you that you should be so grateful for that it pales in comparison to all the work your dad put into raising you? Not the idiot. My dad and I, 21, aren't close. I would say we maybe talk once or twice a year normally. The fallout happened when I was 14. My mom had died 5 years before, and he told me he had gotten engaged the day she and her 2 kids were moving in with us. He told me he had been afraid to tell me and just wanted me to be happy for him and to embrace the fact our family got a little bigger. I was so hurt. Her kids knew about it for over 2 years. They had met my dad. They had spent time with my dad. They had been told about me and they were expecting me to be excited to meet them. They even started planning a thing for us 3 kids to do at the wedding to show how happy we were to become a family. I was so mad and hurt. I never ever expected my dad to stay single forever, but he wanted me to be happy without any warning of what was happening, without any chance to get to know them. His wife's sons were already telling people they were getting a big sister, and I was clueless about the whole damn thing. I had maybe 6 hours to prepare, and then they were looking for physical affection which I wasn't able to give, and my dad was hurt and pissed. And I have never gotten over it. I decided to just move on with my life. Even when I lived there I didn't really talk to my dad anymore, and I became a lot more independent and tried to live my own life. We had a huge fight when I was 17, and he told me my mom would not have wanted me to make his life harder, and she would have been disappointed I wasn't willing to embrace new people for him. I told him she would have been disappointed in him for dropping it all on me when it was too late for me to get used to the idea or to get to know them before they became an everyday part of my life. I told him she had struggled so much when her dad died and her mom remarried, and imagine how she would have felt knowing her own husband would hide the fact it was happening until the new spouse was moving in. Anyway, I started dating my boyfriend in high school but never told my dad. We moved in together just before lockdown, which is when my dad found out, and then he was outraged I never told him I was dating or moving in with someone. I called him a hypocrite and told him he can't expect me to keep him updated on my life after what he pulled when he still doesn't see why it would have fractured my trust in him. He's been reaching out more than ever, but it's only to complain. Am I the idiot though? Not the idiot. He is a hypocrite, and what he did was cruel. Moving on is fine, but casually having a totally new family move in and being told of a wedding with only 6 hours notice is disgusting. I'm not surprised it fractured your relationship. He completely disregards your feelings, so he has brought it on himself. I hope maybe in the future he will mature and empathize with you more so your relationship can get better, but as someone who also really dislikes their dad I completely relate. Not the idiot. Stop talking to your dad. He was content to take on the emotional needs of a stranger's children after the death of his wife and destabilization of his family, preparing them for 2 years and keeping them in the loop, but completely ignored your emotional needs. Someone so young, so fragile, and in grief themselves. Terrible behavior for an adult. He picked his new family. He doesn't give a crap about his old one. In his head, he's going to do what he wants, be damned if anyone will tell him otherwise. Let him, without you. So much not the idiot. Your dad was a hypocrite who never apologized and just wants you to move on without acknowledging any of his past actions. Everything that is happening is the direct result of his own actions and inactions. You're an adult and you don't owe him anything. Reminding him of his hypocrisy doesn't make you an idiot, it explains the status quo. If he wants to know these things, he needs to attempt to repair the relationship, and the first step that would be to acknowledge his own failures. So I do photography as a side hobby for extra cash. portrait shots, engagement sessions, weddings, etc. It's fun and I like what I do. Two of my good friends got engaged last year and were wanting to do an engagement session, and I suggested when it snows we should take advantage of that. They loved the idea, and I even went shopping with the soon-to-be bride to pick out an outfit to go well with a snowy background. We finally find out it was going to snow last night and this morning several days ago. Bride is my neighbor. Groom is not. Groom lives 15 minutes on really bad backroads that ice over and is definitely not safe to drive in after snow. So I suggested he spend the night before. I don't want anyone getting hurt over photos. Groom and bride have slept together plenty of times, in both meanings of the word sleeping, so this isn't a problem of morality. Groom's roommate is obsessed with their lovemaking lives and purity. One time he tore their living room apart in anger, all because the groom spent the night at bride's apartment. Groom has to sneak bride in after his roommate goes to bed and like out at 5 a.m. before he wakes up to prevent angering him. His roommate has all kinds of issues concerning his faith, and he pushes his issues onto the groom and will make life hell if groom doesn't follow roommate's morality code. I'm a Christian myself, but this guy is a lunatic. Over the past 6 months, our other friends and my boyfriend have suggested moving out or even crashing with them because everyone thinks groom's roommate is crazy and creepily controlling, but groom feels obligated to stay since roommate has no other real friends. Anyway, so groom was going to spend the night with bride. That was already discussed so that we can walk to each other in the snow and no one has to drive. I had everything set up and ready to go. I get a text this morning saying groom did not spend the night because he feared angering his roommate, and so we can't do the engagement photos because as I predicted, the roads are iced over. I'm mad and basically told them off that they need to stop letting roommate control their lives and that it's unhealthy as hell and it isn't fair to me to go through lengths to plan a photo shoot and prepare equipment all to cancel 2 hours before by saying groom didn't spend the night as planned. I told them they better suggest something else because there's no way we'll ever do a snow shoot for them if they keep living in fear of roommate. They're upset and think I'm harsh. I think they need to get out of this toxic roommate situation and should have told me in advance that groom was never planning to stay the night because I knew if he didn't, I'd have known not to prepare since I know how bad the roads get. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. You did this essentially as a gift to them for their engagement and they blew you off. Something they probably would not have done if they were paying for the service. If the groom could not make it, the politest thing to do would be to let you know as soon as they knew as soon as he could not make it, not to wait until 2 hours before the shoot when you are already preparing for it. Things happen, however, the rude part is waiting to tell you. That said, the roommate obsessed with his lovemaking life is weird and disturbing on multiple levels. The roommate is not really a roommate. It sounds to me as if all you and your friend know about the roommate's behavior is what the fiancé has told you and his girlfriend, who sneaks around to avoid incurring the wrath of a roommate. Your friend should think long and hard about whether to marry this guy when clearly he's hiding something important from her. Even if the roommate really is a religious zealot, why is the fiancé accommodating this behavior? What is he afraid of? Not the idiot. I wish people understood how much hard work goes into prepping for a photo shoot. I know how frustrating it is when you prep and plan for it to get cancelled. I think the roommate sounds like a complete idiot for wanting to control the groom-to-be, but getting angry because the groom didn't spend the night at his bride's house is not much different than the roommate trying to control where the groom spent the night. Not the idiot for being upset, but just me, I wouldn't have told them off, just expressed my disappointment and let it go.